There is a number that sits at the beginning of every financial story worth telling. It is not $100,000. It is not the day you max out your retirement account for the first time. It is not the year your investments finally start generating more return than you put in. It is $1,000, a number so small that most financial advice skips past it entirely, a number that feels almost embarrassing to talk about when the internet is full of people discussing index funds and early retirement. But here is what those conversations leave out. For most people, getting to $1,000 in savings is the hardest financial thing they will ever do. Not the most dramatic, not the most complex, the hardest. And the reason has almost nothing to do with math. Most people have attempted to save $1,000 at least once. Some of them made it. Many did not. And almost everyone who failed did not fail because they lacked the discipline or the intelligence or the desire. They failed because they were trying to do something genuinely difficult using only willpower. And willpower is the worst possible tool for this particular job. It depletes. It fluctuates. It abandons you at exactly the moment you need it most, which is always the moment when an unexpected expense appears, and the savings account is the only place the money can come from. The people who made it to $1,000 and kept going did not get there through superior willpower. They got there by understanding something that most financial advice never explains: the psychological and structural conditions that make the first 1,000 different from every 1,000 that follows. Once you understand why the first one is hard, the path to the next 10 becomes something different. Not easy, but different, manageable, something you can build a system around rather than a feeling you have to maintain every single day. My name is Arthur. This channel is about understanding how money actually works, not how we wish it worked, but how it actually behaves when it meets a human brain. Subscribe if that sounds useful. New video every week. Here is the full picture of why the first $1,000 is harder, what changes when you get there, and what the path from $1,000 to $10,000 actually looks like. The first reason the first $1,000 is harder is psychological, and it is called loss aversion asymmetry applied to small balances. Loss aversion, the well-documented finding by Kahneman and Tversky that losses feel roughly twice as powerful as equivalent gains, operates differently depending on the size of the balance you are protecting. When your savings account has $800 in it and an unexpected car repair for $400 appears, your brain is not performing a calm financial calculation. It is registering a potential 50% loss of your entire savings. The emotional weight of that loss is enormous. It does not feel like a minor setback. It feels like starting over. When your savings account has $10,000 and the same $400 repair appears, the math is a 4% reduction. Same dollar amount, same expense, but the emotional weight is completely different. The repair is an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. You pay it. You rebuild $400 in a month or two, and the trajectory continues. The difference between these two experiences is not discipline or financial knowledge. It is the buffer size. The first 1,000 is hard because every unexpected expense you encounter along the way represents a catastrophically large percentage of your progress. At a $500 balance, a $200 expense is a 40% setback. At a $10,000 balance, the same $200 expense is 2%. The math of small balances makes resilience structurally difficult. Every step forward can be followed by a step that feels like starting over. This is why people start saving, hit an obstacle, drain the account, and tell themselves they will try again later. Later comes, they try again. Another obstacle, another drain. The pattern repeats not because they lack commitment, but because they are playing a game where every bad luck event costs them a disproportionate percentage of what they have built. And the psychological toll of that pattern, the exhaustion of repeatedly rebuilding from near zero, is cumulative. Each failure makes the next attempt slightly harder to begin. The second reason the first 1,000 is harder is structural, and it is about the mechanics of momentum. Saving $10 when you have $0 requires a decision. Saving $10 when you already have $990 requires a habit. These are not the same thing. Decisions require active cognitive engagement every time. Habits run automatically in the background, without consuming the same mental resources. The first $1,000 must be built primarily through decisions, active, repeated choices made in the presence of competing demands, because the behavior has not yet been wired into a habit. After you have crossed the $1,000 threshold and established the savings behavior as a regular, automated part of your financial life, the decisions become habits. The habits compound. The account grows with significantly less active mental effort than it required to get started. This is why people who have saved their first $10,000 almost never report saving it, feeling like 10 times the effort of the first 1,000. They report it feeling easier. The work was front-loaded into the habit formation period. which happens primarily during the first 1,000. The third reason is what might be called the emergency fund trap, a specific structural feature of small savings balances that keeps millions of people recycling through the same first $500 for years. When your total savings balance is below approximately $1,000, it is not really savings. It is a waiting room. It is money that is technically in a savings account, but is psychologically earmarked for the next emergency. And because the balance is too small to handle most real emergencies, when the emergency arrives, car repair, medical bill, unexpected travel, home appliance, it drains the account completely and you start again. Research from the Federal Reserve's annual report on the economic well-being of U.S. households has consistently found that approximately 40% of American adults could not cover a $400 unexpected expense without borrowing money or selling something. This is not a poverty problem. It is a balance problem. Millions of people who earn adequate incomes are caught in this trap, earning, occasionally saving, losing the savings to an emergency, starting over indefinitely. The exit from this trap is not gradual. It requires a specific threshold, a true emergency fund of $1,000 that is separated, both psychologically and practically, from operating money, not a savings account you dip into when something comes up, an account you do not touch except for genuine emergencies, with a clear definition of what qualifies. Once you have established that separation, the next 1,000 you save is building, not waiting, and building feels different from waiting. Now let us talk about what actually happens between $1,000 and $10,000, because this is where most financial advice goes wrong. The conventional framing is that saving is a linear discipline problem. You decide to save. You save. You reach your goal. In this framing, the first 1,000 and the next 9,000 are the same challenge at different scales. The only variable is how long you keep doing the same thing. This is incorrect. The experience of saving changes structurally as your balance grows, and it changes in ways that get progressively easier, not progressively harder. At $1,000, you've eliminated the near-zero psychology. An unexpected $200 expense is now 20% of your balance. Still meaningful, but no longer catastrophic. You rebuild it in a few weeks. The emotional impact of setbacks is lower, which means the probability of abandoning the effort after a setback is lower. At $2,500, you have covered the Federal Reserve's $400 benchmark with room to spare. Your balance can absorb a typical emergency without being depleted entirely. This is the point where the account starts feeling like an actual asset rather than a placeholder. The behavior of protecting it begins to feel worth the effort in a way it did not when the balance was small enough to lose in a single event. At $5,000, something shifts in how the money feels. $5,000 is enough to handle most common financial emergencies: a car repair, a medical copay, a month of expenses if income is interrupted. The account has functional power that it did not have at $500. This functional power is motivating in a way that abstract future goals are not. You are not saving for something that will happen in 30 years. You are maintaining something that is protecting you right now. At $10,000, two things happen that permanently change the financial psychology of the person who holds it. First, the compounding becomes visible. At a 5% high-yield savings rate, $10,000 generates $500 per year in interest, roughly $42 per month, without you doing anything. This is a qualitative shift. The money is now working in a way that produces a meaningful, observable return. Saving went from being a discipline exercise to being a system that generates results on its own. Second, and more importantly, the financial identity shift occurs. The person who has $10,000 saved thinks about money differently than the person who has $500, not because of the dollar amount. The number itself does not confer wisdom or virtue, but because the experience of getting there, maintaining it through setbacks, and watching it grow has changed what feels normal. The $10,000 saver has demonstrated to themselves, through repeated evidence, that they are someone who saves money. That identity is more durable than any resolution or goal. Here is the math that most people never see, laid out plainly. If you save $300 per month starting from zero, you reach $1,000 in approximately 3.5 months. 3.5 months of active, difficult, decision-intensive saving, during which every unexpected expense feels like a major setback. From $1,000 to $10,000, $9,000 more, at the same $300 per month with a 5% high-yield savings rate, takes approximately 25 months. But it does not feel like 25 months of the same difficulty as the first 3.5, because by month 4 or 5, the automated transfer is set up. The habit is forming. The balance is large enough that setbacks are recoverable. The behavior is becoming automatic. The total time to reach $10,000 from zero at $300 per month is approximately 28 to 29 months, less than 2.5 years. That is the entire arc, from zero to $10,000 in under 30 months. And from $10,000, the math accelerates. Add investment returns, add the motivating effect of visible compounding, add the identity shift, and the next 10,000 is faster than the first. Not slightly faster, meaningfully faster. The psychological and structural conditions that made the first 1,000 so hard are no longer present. They were conditions of small balance saving, and you are no longer in that territory. Now let us talk about the mechanics of actually getting to $1,000, because the advice that exists on this topic is often either too vague or too focused on extreme frugality. The first principle is separation. The savings account that will become your emergency fund must be at a different bank than your checking account, not a different account at the same bank, a different institution entirely. The reason is friction. When your savings is at the same bank as your checking, the transfer is instant, effortless, and available at any moment. The low friction makes it easy to move money out when something feels urgent. When your savings is at a different bank, the transfer takes 1 to 3 business days. That delay is enough to interrupt most impulse withdrawals. The urgency fades, the balance stays. The second principle is automation before visibility. Set up an automatic transfer for a fixed amount, whatever amount you can genuinely sustain, even if it is $25 per week, to happen the day after your paycheck arrives. Not after you have paid your bills, not after you have seen what is left over, the day after your paycheck. The reason is simple. Money you never see does not trigger the same spending impulse as money sitting in your checking account. Out of sight, genuinely easier to leave alone. The third principle is the reframe from saving to paying yourself first. The reason most savings efforts fail is that savings is treated as what remains after everything else is handled. This guarantees that savings will always lose to the pressure of current expenses, because current expenses have immediate emotional weight and future savings does not. When you flip the order, pay yourself first, then handle expenses with what remains, you reverse the pressure. Now the question is not whether to save. The savings already happened. The question is how to manage current expenses with what is left, which is a significantly more tractable problem. The fourth principle is the 1% increment. If your current savings rate is 0, going to 20% overnight is not a habit change. It is a heroic effort, and heroic efforts are not sustainable. Go from 0 to 1%. 1% of a $50,000 annual salary is $42 per month. Hold it for 3 months. Then go to 2%, then 3%. Research on habit formation consistently shows that small, sustained increments produce more durable behavior change than large voluntary changes, because the small changes never trigger the resistance response that causes people to quit. Let us run the numbers on the 1% increment approach. You earn $50,000 per year. You start at 1%, $42 per month. On January 1st, you increase by 1% every 3 months. By month 12, you are at 4%, $167 per month. By month 24, you are at 8%, $333 per month. At that rate, with a 5% savings account return, you reach $10,000 in approximately 34 months from starting at 0. 34 months, 2 years, and 10 months. From 0 to $10,000 by incrementing 1% every quarter, starting at $42 per month. The difficulty of the first 3 months, $42 per month, is so low that failure is almost impossible. The behavior is established before the amounts are large enough to hurt. By the time you reach $300 per month, it has been a habit for almost 2 years. You have already demonstrated to yourself that you can do it. The identity is there. The system is running. The first 1,000, the genuinely hard part, is long behind you. Here is the core of everything covered. The first $1,000 is hard for specific, structural reasons that have nothing to do with your character or your commitment. Small balances amplify the emotional impact of every setback. The behavior has not yet become automatic. Every emergency drains a catastrophic percentage of what you have built. These are conditions that make the first 1,000 genuinely harder than what follows, not because of your choices, but because of the mechanics of small balance saving. Once you cross the first 1,000, the conditions change. Setbacks are smaller as a percentage. The behavior is more automatic. The balance has functional power. And at 10,000, the compound effect becomes visible and the identity shift becomes permanent. Get there through separation, Automation, paying yourself first, and 1% increments. These are not tricks. They are the structural conditions that make the genuinely hard thing tractable. The first 1,000 is the hardest 1,000 you will ever save. Everything after it is a different game.